Everybody here is super excited to see me this morning, unlike other mornings, and that's because yesterday I got the little area enclosed where they could be outdoors during the day and hang out. Now, it looks like it might rain at some point, but I'm still gonna let all these guys out to kind of venture. They cannot be out with the main flock because our geese, while not particularly aggressive towards people, I've seen them pick up smaller ducks and fling them across the run to get them out of their way because they are kind of territorial with the other animals. So I definitely don't want a bunch of small chickens out there with the geese because I'm afraid that the geese would be far too aggressive and end up hurting one or scaring the snot out of all of them. Unfortunately, I don't really have a way to transport these. Actually, I think I have a plastic bucket in the front yard that I can do it that way. So what I've been doing is just having the boys help me pick them all up, and move them. And you can see they freak out when you go to reach them. They're not a fan of being picked up, especially these tiny birds. But look at this. Tiniest chicken in the world. I'm starting to think these are old English bantams. I know I was really curious about what they were for. Hey, that was not nice. I don't think that chicken's gonna make it. I think it's a boy based off of the feathers coming in on his tail. And this is the second time he's pecked the small chickens that I've seen. Yesterday he was doing it around the run. So I'm just not sure this one, once he's big enough, will be anything more than dinner. I'm already tired of his little pecking attitude. Okay, so this is the area, and if you've been around a little bit, you know that this area used to be the area where the door was originally to the coop. And so this was closed off. This was the original run. It's not very big. And then we expanded it to be the whole fence line and then eventually added the other side. That's why it's so massive. But since I wanted to separate them from the geese, and I don't want them in this whole area because all of this over here, I've decided to make an in-ground garden. Now, after the gardening season ends, I'll let the animals back in here and have at it with the garden. But for now, I really want to make use of this space, and you can see that every last bit of greenery is gone in here because of the birds. So at least this will get some plants in the ground so the ground is not bare, and it'll also help me out by giving me some more garden space to grow food and even grow some fodder for the animals. And then this area, which you can see, there are flies everywhere. It's definitely fly season here. Now it's hot, humid, and stuff from animals, just a mess. Once this gets covered, I'll put deep litter bedding out here so that they can have that to help with the flies. But this is completely open and uncovered other than the fencing. So there's just no point in it, especially on days like today where it looks like rain. And I did not have a door for this since the door is on the main coop now. So what I did was just take this garden trellis that I had made out of an IBC frame and added the predator wire that was just kind of hanging out over here. It used to have, oh my goodness, I can't even think of the plant's name. Anyways, we used to have a vining plant, passion fruit, that was growing on it, but the passion fruit died, and this has just been sitting here ever since. So I went ahead and took some zip ties out of the shed and made this really quick. And it's just big enough that the chickens can't get out because they're rather small. But then it dawned on me that they could probably grab these with their feet and hop out if they wanted to. So I can turn it the opposite direction so they can't do that. But so far it has not been an issue. You can see where I threw some squash in here for them to kind of start practicing foraging and just to give them something to do. Even though they're babies, they need to get around and exercise and kind of start practicing all of that free ranging and foraging. And I think it also helps kind of bust boredom because it gets bored, boring just sitting around doing nothing. It's no different for animals. They need stuff to do to keep them occupied, and they weren't designed to just be locked up all the time. So this is a great option because you can see just what a big difference it is compared to that tiny pen. So I've been kind of debating this whole time whether or not I would bring them out because the sky is so incredibly cloudy. But I really think I want to let them out for a little bit, and then if it starts raining, just run out here and gather them up and put them back inside. I do need to figure out some kind of little housing situation in here so that they can hang out. I did think about putting our IBC brooder out here for them, but the only issue is it's not going to fit through this thing. The IBC totes are 4 foot wide, and this is just not quite wide enough for it to fit through. So that is one issue that I've encountered. So I've gotten everybody out of the coop and in here, and there's no way I could carry my phone and record and get all these guys out. I usually bring them out in batches of 3 or 4, so that's about 4 to 5 trips depending on how many I can grab. Sometimes they're hard to get, so you give up after grabbing 1 or 2 of them. And I know there's the tiniest ones, I think they're roosters, and they're hard to catch, especially being so light. They will be capable of flight to a certain extent, and so they just flap up and fly away from me to the far back corners, and that is a really large rabbit cage. So what happens is my arms can only reach so far back, and it's just not fun trying to get some of them. They've decided to all congregate in the food bowl now. This is what they're doing today, apparently. Now that they're getting a little older, it looks like they're trying to establish what the pecking order is around here. Which is probably why this big one keeps pecking everyone else, because for one, it appears to be a boy, and for 2, I guess wants to be in charge of everyone else. It's definitely larger than all the other birds. You can kind of see him next to the smaller birds, just what a huge difference is. And the smaller birds are several weeks older, so if that tells you anything. Now, there are 12 chickens total, and for sure I'm thinking this little one is a girl. Both the naked necks we bought as sexed girls, and the 2 solid black ones are supposed to be girls. So the rest, it's kind of up in the air what they are, because we hatched them out, and so we have no idea. But some of them, they have really tiny tails and no hackle feathers, so that may mean that it's a girl, or it could just be the type of chicken it is. And since the ones we got are heavily mixed, as you can see by their different colors, I have no idea what to expect. The flock we got these from, they were mixed with bantams and large breeds, feathered feet, non-feathered feet, colored eggs, brown eggs, white eggs, like you name it, barring, no barring. There are just so many possibilities, which is why some of these guys have some interesting color, kind of what I would call slightly ugly, but there's a lot of black and white barring with some rust color mixed into there. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what they look like as they age and grow out. Some of these are actually pretty big, like the white one over here is pretty big, which I actually think that white one's a girl. So those might actually be a pretty good dual-purpose chicken. But I also noticed that they have a greenish tint to their feet and feathered feet. So definitely a cross of some sort. I think what happened is some of the larger breed chickens, like the Orpingtons, probably bred with the smaller feathered feet chickens. And these girls right here, the solid black ones, they are a cross between a silky and a meat bird. They are called black onyx chickens. So they're supposed to kind of be, I would almost say, a specialty chicken, and designed to cater to that market of dark meat loving people. I'm getting distracted by the chickens. And so people who love dark meat, the idea was to create a chicken with all dark meat, so in place of just the regular broiler. But they are definitely not growing the way a broiler does. I mean, they're half silky, which I get that because you want them to have the dark skin and meat and all of that, but I don't know. They're not very big. I would say if you just want a dark meat chicken, I get it, but other than that, I just don't really see the point in them yet. They're not fast at gaining weight. They look like they're going to be rather small. So, I guess we'll see what happens. I didn't know what they were at the time. I knew they were black onyx. I didn't understand that they were part silky and part broiler. Like, the whole point was to make a dark meat bird that for meat production. They breed naturally and they lay eggs, so that's something more beneficial. But I think since we don't particularly care about whether it's dark meat or light meat on a bird, and also Cornish rocks are not a sustainable meat, it's just a great way to get food in the freezer fast. So we will grow out Cornish rocks, but they are not our favorite. They are not the best tasting. We're really leaning towards more maybe getting the heritage Delaware broilers. And I think those birds, they will still be able to breed naturally, and I'm getting better at hatching out eggs, so I'll be able to hatch them out. It'll take about 16 weeks to grow them out, which is a bit longer than the Cornish rocks, but they grow at a more sustainable and healthy weight. I wouldn't have to feed them as much grain, and they'll be able to forage and everything else on our land and eat that way. And then if we don't want to butcher them all, we can just keep us a flock to also give us eggs. So I feel like it's just a really good dual purpose bird. It's not going to be 100% an egg bird, so we're not going to get as many eggs as we would as, say, maybe some leghorns or something of that nature, but it's still a really good bird. And I think that's kind of the direction that we're heading, because the more I want to be sustainable on my own property, the more I realize things like Cornish rocks, while good temporarily, they're not good for long term or for stability. I think what I'll probably start doing is starting to hatch my own birds as far as egg layers, and then when I get the Delaware meat birds, continue to hatch out, but to get a large amount of meat in the freezer and not have to buy grocery store meat constantly. What I think I'm going to do is twice a year buy probably both. I would say probably buy some meat broilers from the hatchery and also buy some meat turkeys, and then just grow those out and process them for the freezer. So that will provide a large portion of meat in a short period of time until I'm able to just grow everything here, which I may not be able to 100% grow all of my meat here, but it would be nice to try. I'm just getting to the point that even if I have to buy a butcher ready pig from someone else or things of that nature to just keep us from having to go to the grocery store, maybe save some money, and maybe know more about where our meat's coming from, that's more the direction I'm heading. I feel like every time I go to the grocery store, I get such anxiety. Not so much of just the products, but all the people there and the chaos, and I just don't like it. I'm a bit of an introvert in that respect. I will say I'm too busy to make plans just so I can stay home and film my animals and read a book. And it works out for me now because I'm actually had plans that I was really looking forward to. That part didn't work out. But I have COVID. And I do have some symptoms, you know. I feel like I have a flu. I have the flu. So I'm not feeling so grand. And so it's been nice to just kind of be able to stay home and come out here. I'll record the birds, then I'll just go right back inside. I didn't realize how much you cannot handle the heat when you're sick. The first time I ever got COVID, I actually worked in acute care, and it was 2020, so COVID was a big issue. And then the Delta virus came, and it was even worse. And it was a really rural community, so there wasn't a lot of facilities to take care of people or anything else. So our hospital just kind of got the brunt of everything. And I tell you what, it was so rough. We had been working crazy hours when we finally came down and got sick. And I was so cold. I would sit outside in high 90-degree weather and still be freezing in like my thick winter pajamas. And this time I'm so hot, even come outside for like 20 minutes and I'm pouring sweat. It's just awful. So I see such a big difference in the way I felt then versus the way I feel now. And luckily this time it doesn't feel as bad. Before I could barely get out of bed. I got hit hard. And so it's crazy how you can go from having a ton of symptoms and being incredibly sick to not having very many symptoms, or the symptoms varying. So it always surprises me how illness varies, not only between people, but in myself. Like how every time I get sick it's something totally different, even it's the same virus that I've had before. Just is what it is, I guess. You would think I would be well aware of this, which I am, working in healthcare, but it still fascinates me the way that disease works in both humans and animals, and the way that health works. Might also be one of the reasons why I'm so interested in raising animals, a little bit different than how we see them in kind of more factory farm settings. I tell you what though, I will be glad when I get these babies out there in that grass on the other side where they can range everywhere. Once they get a little bit older, that is the plan. Hopefully we'll have the backyard fully fenced in and they can take turns rotating with the geese and ducks in all that area. And we plan on kind of separating the backyard into 2 additional paddocks. So basically it would be the coop, which is already divided into 2 sections, and it can be divided into 3, as you can see with this little area. And then we have the backyard, which will divide in half about where the house is, and that will allow us to release the chickens in a separate area from the ducks and geese, which works out because I really do not want the chickens around the ducks and geese. For one, because I've seen some crazy things about ducks trying to breed with chickens, and I have had my ducks get a little aggressive with chickens in the past, but also because I know my geese will be aggressive. They're very territorial with the ducks. They will definitely be territorial with the chickens, and with them being so massive, that is not something that I want to risk at all. I'm going to be honest and say I could literally sit here for hours watching my chickens just run around. And look at these 2. They're trying to decide who's boss. So that one over there is one of our largest chickens against the smallest rooster I've ever seen in my life. Look at this. It's nice for the smaller breeds, you can tell which ones are roosters already because they already have the bright red combs coming in really strong. But the smaller hen, she doesn't hardly have a comb at all. It's really cool seeing their scratching instincts kicking in already, and they're so young. Well, I could probably sit here all day watching these birds scratch the ground and learn how to do everything, and I would, but I have some dishes and things to wash inside the house, and then I have some sourdough starter that just came in, so I kind of want to experiment with that and see how that works. It's been several years since I've made my own sourdough bread. I used to make it almost daily, and then one day my sourdough starter, I lost track of it for about a week and a half, and I didn't feed it, and it died and started turning pink. And I just stopped making it after that. Life kind of got ahead of me, and I backed away from a lot of things: gardening, homesteading, animals, everything. So now that I'm kind of getting a better hold on life, things are slowing down. And overall, the baby's doing a lot better. She's a lot healthier than she was. She's home. We're not going to doctor's appointments every week. We are still have doctor's appointments pretty routinely, but it's a lot different. So I think that really helps and allows us to kind of get back in the routine of things, add more animals, and do things like make sourdough bread and everything else again. Also, I plan on getting back into canning as I garden more. I will say, if life throws things at you and you have to take a step back and downscale a minute, do it, because it's probably the best thing I did for myself and my family at that time. This lone chicken over here, it's eating the seeds off the cilantro. I wanted to save all the seeds for coriander, but I did notice there was some poison ivy awful close to the plant, so I went ahead and pulled a couple out and threw them to the birds, and then the rest I just went ahead and put them inside to begin drying. But I'm going to go ahead and go inside and do what I need to do before it starts raining and I have to put these babies back inside. I just wanted to give them a chance to come outside and really move around and allow them to be more active and kind of practice digging out the ground, finding their own food, and just not being bored. So it's really fun to watch them continue to grow and enjoy themselves and just learn how to be chickens, I guess. So thank you to everyone who kind of joins in and watches these videos and learns about our birds and what we're doing for ourselves. I hope in some capacity, even if it doesn't make you want to go out and buy a bunch of chickens and homestead, I hope it brings you joy, because it certainly brings us joy watching these guys run around and watching the kids come out here and pick them up and hang out with them. That's really fun too. So thanks for hanging out with us.